Well, hello guys, welcome to a new Tennis Elbow Manager 2 video. I am the Custard Prophet. Now, for all you folks who have watched my content in the past, you might well know that my channel is mainly a Football Manager based channel. That is the game I love most, and that is the game I make the most content on. But you may also be aware that Tennis Elbow Manager is I've been making videos weekly for the last year and a half because I really enjoy this game as well. Now, coming from the Football Manager community, there's a lot. I mean, it's a fairly saturated market in terms of content creation. There's a lot of Let's Plays, but there's also a lot of tips and tricks and how to do this better and how to do that better kind of videos. But in the case of Tennis Elbow Manager, there is absolutely none of that. And in fact, there's very few people actually actively playing the game and making content. At the minute, I did have a look, and there is only one other creator, as far as I could tell, who was making content in the last sort of week, and they are doing it in a non-English language. So if you're wanting to watch a current save in English, my channel is the only one that is doing that, which is a nice selling point. But you'd think, actually, well, if that's the case, then no one would watch it. But the first episode of my Tennis Elbow Manager 2 Let's Play series is the second most viewed video on my channel. So where am I going with all this rambling? Well, what I thought, because the Football Manager side tends to do all these tips and tricks videos, and they are very, very well watched and very, very well enjoyed by people who just play the game, I was wondering, well, if no one has made this content for Tennis Elbow Manager 2, well, would that be something that would be interesting, or whether would there even be a market for that? And the simple answer is, I really don't know. But I think it's worth giving it a shot and seeing if there are people who enjoy this sort of content. And if you are one of those people who kind of want to see this sort of content around, you know, how to play the game, how to understand the training and various other things, then drop a like on the video. Let me know in the comments what sort of things you would like to see. What are you struggling with? And I will try and make a video on anything that I see down there. It may be that this is a one-off video, but it may be that we do a few more of these things. If this is the sort of thing you like, hit the like button and please subscribe on my channel. I'm desperately trying to get to, well, desperately sounds terrible, I'm trying to get to 500 subs. I'm about, I think, 465 at the minute, so not far away. And it would be really nice to get some skates on those numbers and push them past the 500 mark. I'd be very grateful if you would do that. So, what are we doing in this video? Well, we are going to be thinking about training, how to use the training tab that we have in the game, what all of this means, and what we should be doing with it. So, I am using this. This is a guy from my other save, the Let's Play save, Sean Death, Gibraltarian international tennis player, but ex-footballer. He's got a whole story behind him, and he's, what is he, year 2022. So I've had a lot of time to build things up using the training. You can see what you get when you open this training screen is that you have all your gameplay stats that sit over here, your rally, volley, special and service stats. You've got the surfaces here. You've got your physical stuff here and your mental stuff here. Now, all of those things you need to work with in a slightly different way when it comes to training. They all kind of work differently. When you open the game up, you will not have, it won't look like this. You won't have all of these yellow bars, which indicates that I'm at 95% of my potential here, which is this little line there. I'm at 95% of where I could possibly get, which is great for forehand power. But when you start the game, you will be all the way down the other end of that. So don't expect that. But what you need then to do is be able to build that up. So let's have a little look through what training is all about. So every week when you're not playing a match, you will have 42 hours of training. Now that is split into 6 hours per day, so the 7 days of 6 hours, making you have 42 hours of training. Now what I didn't realize until very recently is that within that, because it's over a 7-day period, every 6 hours there is a little rest plugged into that, so you get a little bit of recovery every 6 hours. And you'll see that sometimes, because sometimes when you do a very short train, you actually see an increase in short-term form, and the short-term form is essentially gives you an idea of your ability to train. It's very much linked to your energy. When that is all the way down to 0, you won't be able to train anymore. You'll have to rest. But you do get times where your short-term form goes up, even though you trained. I never understood that, but it relates to those little rest periods every 6 hours. So you have 42 hours, and you are going to use that to train all of these different aspects. And what you need to try and figure out is where you want to focus on. Now that's maybe a fairly easy thing to do, because at the start of the game you get the option of what style of player your guy is going to be, or your gal is going to be. So there's a whole bunch of options. So the likes of defender, power baseliner, puncher, all-court attacker, volleyer, counter puncher, all-rounder, and bulldog. They are all different styles of play, but they all require you to focus on different technical skills. I'll leave a link down in the description below to the document on the Mana Games website, the developers of this, who go through what you need to focus on there. And that's where you'll want to focus on initially to get yourself improving. So for example, a counter player will need to have you need to focus on rally consistency, passing and counter. In technical skills, physical skills, you'll need to focus on speed, and the mental skills, you'll need to focus on tactics, positioning and self-confidence. By the look of it, tactics, positioning and self-confidence are key to pretty much everything, but the other skills do vary depending on what you start with. My lad here is a all-rounder. Shawnee's an all-rounder, so actually in terms of technical skills and physical skills, I can do whatever I want. So let's work through what all of these things mean. So if I was going to use some of my time to train, what I'll need to do is decide what I'm going to train. So if I'm this all-rounder, I might want to increase my forehand consistency, and you click on that, you get the chance to change that. You can go all the way from 1 hour all the way up to, I've got 12 hours left on this training schedule that you can see in the bottom left, but I can go all the way up to that 12 hours and use that. So if we do that, there we go, we get a slight increase in forehand consistency with that 1 hour's worth of training. Your short-term form reduces a little bit, and there we go. There is also another option that you can do. You can also click this button here, which allows you to train all 6 of those categories. Now this, as it says here, there is a 50% time bonus. Now the way this works, and I had to look this up because it really didn't make any sense to me. For example, if I was going to train in each one of these individually for 1 hour, if I was to click this button and train for 6 hours, it would be equivalent to me training each one of these for 1 hour plus 50% more for all of those. So you get a little bit extra on each one of those, but you have to train the lot. You can't focus on one. So for example, when you've got a situation like this, where your training skills are quite high in a particular area, this isn't a bad thing to go for to maintain things over time, because your abilities do drop down over time. So if you don't train something, so for example, I don't train my volleys because I don't get Shawnee to go to the net much. If those drop down to sort of a sort of basal level eventually. And the same would happen with all of these things, depending on what you decide to focus on. There's a couple of other things to note, and these little blue lines. These will change depending on your player's age, but they are essentially the potential of your player, where your player can reach. And you can see here that these are all quite high, but as your player ages, those things are going to reduce over time. There is another thing you might see, certainly when you're starting out, and this is these red lines. Now, if you see any of these red lines on any of these technical skills, this is the potential that the player can reach because it is being limited by something else. And let me explain what I mean by that. So, for example, if it appears, and it often will appear on your forehand power, it might have an orange line that appears here. This will relate to some of your physical skills where they're not particularly high. So things like strength and stamina, where those things are not particularly high, that will put these kind of temporary potential limits that appear. And the way you get rid of those is by upping the physical abilities. You can train beyond these things, but as soon as you go past them, it becomes incredibly hard to go too far past them. So those are your technical attributes there, and that's how to alter those. So the next one along is surfaces. Now this will very much relate, certainly in early game, this will very much relate to the time of year. As you know, in tennis, there are periods where you play on certain surfaces. So you have the clay court season, the grass court season, the hard court season. So the more time that your player spends on court, so if it's on court playing in a tournament, that still counts, the more these will go up and the better you'll be able to exist on those surfaces. Now you can do this artificially, you can influence these things artificially. So if you're coming into the clay court season and you may be taking a couple of weeks break beforehand, well, what you can do is select your training court, and when you get a little bit further in the game, get a bit of money, you'll be able then to say, well, actually what's coming up is the I think the cement courts, so we'll push that on there. So what that will do is that all your training back at your camp will be done on your cement courts then. And this is important to do and kind of plan throughout, because what you don't want to do is come completely unprepared to the season like I just did there, because I'm still based on grass. So that's not great. But because I've been playing quite a bit now on this sort of pace court, that has started to increase, and that might have been a reason why form wasn't so great when I moved from the grass to the hard courts. Okay, so those are your surface. Those are the surfaces here. You can also select your training court, and they will also increase better if you have a practice partner and you can hire a practice partner to help you out. So here on the physical attributes, these are important. As I've said, they relate over here to putting these artificial potential on some of the technical attributes, but they can also impact some of those technical attributes as well. So with all these others you can do it directly, but here you are unable to. So you have to click on one of them and you get the option to choose one of these activities. Now some of these you can do on your own, some of them you need a buddy, unfortunately. And you can see what they actually improve. So you can see if you do jogging, you improve stamina, muscle tone and speed. So for this one, stamina is the main one, but one thing that might not be aware is that forehand and backhand power and consistency will be improved by this slightly. So you have main improvements and also secondary improvements as well. You can't see all of those on here, but again, it's in that Manor Games document, so I'll point you in that direction and you can check through all of those. So for example, with yoga, this does increase a bunch of things. I was aware of this. It doesn't have a main improvement, but there's some smaller improvements. It's kind of like resting, but actually with being able to do some of the other things. So things like concentration, focus, and cold blood that you can see on there. Also reflexes and muscle tone are also impacted by yoga. So that's what you want to do there. These things can be improved further with if you have for example, a swimming pool or a gym in your training complex. So I have a gym in the training complex, and this improves your muscle tone, I think, by about 50%. So you're 50% more effective in the training, which is good. No, I think it's strength actually. So that's probably why my strength is quite high. So that's important there. And that's how you do your physical changes. So now moving on to the mental skills that you've got. And you've got a bunch of these, as you can see: concentration, focus, cold blood, constancy. I don't quite know what word that's supposed to be. Tactics, positioning, and self-confidence. Now again, I'll point you to the Man of Games document to completely understand what each one of these things are. But each one has an important role to play, and certainly depending on who you are and the type of player you are, you might want to be focusing in certain areas compared to others perhaps. But as you can see, one of the big things I've tried to do is make sure that the mental attributes stay high all along. Everything else, I think, comes, I deal with almost secondary. Good thing about these things is that they don't take quite so much out of your short-term form either. But the important thing to remember here is that you can't just use these. You can't just say, I'm going to spend 10 hours increasing my tactics. The only way you can do that is if you have 10 experience points as well. So so if I was to do 10 hours there, I would need 10 experience points, which I have 29, so I am able to do that. And the experience points here are gathered from playing matches. So you have to play matches to be able to alter this at all. And I think this is really, really important to get on top of. I think it might even be slightly OP, because when I have played other players who look like they are much better than me in terms of their technical abilities, but not quite as good mentally, then sometimes we do a lot better. Not always, but sometimes, and that may depend on the exact combination of the skills that they have perhaps. So the experience points there you can spend in that way, and it's important to remember that you can also spend experience points during matches as well. So keep that in mind. You might have a big tournament coming up, so you might want to keep some experience points in the bank to be able to play or to be able to use during those matches. You will pick them up as you go, but maybe if you're in Wimbledon, you've got you're ranked 8th in the world like Shawnee is, and you have a tough opening round fixture, it's really close, and you just want to give yourself a little bit of an edge right at the end, then you'll probably want a few in the bank for that. So that's your mental attributes. One interesting thing, I've never used this here, and let me know in the comments if you've used it. You can actually record your training schedule. So if you do the same thing each time, you can record it and then just play it back, and so you don't have to bother again. I like to change mine up quite a lot depending on what's dropping and what's not. So I will do it in my own way, and that's why I've never used that. I think down here is also something that's fairly important. You can see exactly what the style of your player is, so you're an all-rounder. But here you can see the talents. Now these are things that you start out with at the beginning of the game. You can see that I chose this one, ability to hit the ball on the rise, which is quite important, I think, in clay court, because the ball is bouncing all the time really high. Things like globetrotter, so less tired after trips, especially long ones. That's a mistake, isn't it? Start with $0 instead of $0, but you lose training each day. So basically, a bunch of these things will impact how you start out in the game as well, and how your abilities. Again, all of those things are covered in the document that I will put in the description. Okay, so that is the training in a nutshell. Things to remember from my point of view. Figure out what your player style is, and you might even want to think about this beforehand, and then get those particular attributes increased first and focus on those things. Get your mental attributes, start to improve some of those as you gather experience points, So there is one more thing that can impact all of this, and these are bringing in coaches. Again, this comes in later game, so I'll have a look at the team that I've got, and you can see that you have a variety of trainers that you can bring in, and they have a major skill, and you get a bonus, a training bonus with that, and then a minor skill, and then you get a trainer bonus with that, and then they have an increase to other skills as well, depending on how good the coach is. So these are my 4 coaches. I can see that I've got one very good one, and one and a few who are not so good that I got earlier on in the game. So it's important to keep on top of that and maybe try and improve these over time and try and get these better. At the bottom you can see the bonuses that you've got as a result of these coaches and myself. I got this 12% increase in rallying, but that is worse than anyone else. It doesn't seem to be cumulative. Okay, so there we are. That is the training within this game. Hopefully that was informative. Hopefully you can take a little bit away from that and you understand perhaps a little bit better what all of these things are and how they work and what you should be doing with them. If you've got any advice, any tips and tricks that you would like to put forward, put them down in the comments below, and let me know how you go about your training. Do you focus in particular areas? Are certain attributes you think are particularly more important than others? Are some massively OP? Are my thoughts on the mental side of training, are they what you find as well? Let me know down below, and it'll be interesting to see what you've got to say. I think there were 1 or 2 bits that I didn't go through, but I think we've covered the majority of it. So if you did like this video and this style of video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you next time for another video. Goodbye.